Dogfish, deliberating. Dogfish, I'm the dude.
One minute, dude.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fight!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Deliberating Dog-Faced Dudes. I believe this is week number 8 that we've been doing this, and really looking forward to this one. My partner from the Natural Freedom League, Will Keller, is joining us. Today's title is Benjamin Balderson versus Will Keller. Will Keller. Is morality objective or subjective? This is a good one. It'll be moderated by none other than AlanMarcus.com. What's up, Alan Marcus? How you doing?
Doing well. Let's MC Escherizes Eschaton. Let's get it on and begin the end.
All right. I'm going to add the other two gentlemen to the stage and let Marcus take over.
So we have Balderson with us and first-time guest, Will Keller. I got a little bit of homework I did, a little book report. Let's set the stage with some of the greatest philosophers in history. These thinkers who have shaped how we understand ethics, morality, and the human condition. First up, we have Immanuel Kant. No, that's Immanuel Kant with a K, K-A-N-T, with his classic work, Groundwork of the Metaphysics of Morals. Kant's all about duty and the categorical imperative, laying down the law on what it means to act morally. We've got David Hume next, the skeptic with a heart. From his treatise of human nature, Hume brings emotion into the mix, showing us how our feelings, not just reason, play a big part in our moral decisions. John Stuart Mill comes in strong with utilitarianism. I think I've mentioned that word a few times on the show before. Championing the greatest happiness principle. For Mill, it's all about maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain, not just for yourself, but for everyone involved tonight. And then there's Friedrich Nietzsche, every teenage boy's favorite angsty black t-shirt wearing dude from Germany with Beyond Good and Evil. You know, Nietzsche's the rebel, questioning everything we think we know about morality. He's famous for his idea that morality isn't some objective truth, but something we create ourselves, driven by our own will to power. Let's write some songs about it and cry together. That'll get us all girlfriends. G.E. Moore takes on a different path with Principia Ethica. Ooh, fancy. Moore's an ethical non-naturalist. I don't know if that's a nudist. I don't know if he gets out in nature much. He's probably writing a lot of text arguing that moral properties are real and objective, but not something you can just pin down like a donkey tail or a tail on a donkey. What comes first, the categorical imperative or the cart or the horse, the donkey? Like pleasure or pain, I don't know if that's allowed. Bestiality. Delete that from the notes. That wasn't supposed to be there. A.J. Ayer, have you heard of this guy? Switching up things with language, truth, and logic. Ayer's all about emotivism. I don't think those are emojis or little yellow happy smiley faces or pinatas or what is it? The aubergine? Yeah, the dick emojis. That's what it's about, right? Emotivism. Moral statements are more about expressing how we feel rather than stating facts. For him, saying something's good or bad is like giving it a thumbs up or down on Facebook or YouTube. I think they took away the disapproval. So now it's just everything's good. And finally, we've got J.L. Mackie, if that's his real name. He's got his view from nowhere. Mackie's known for his error theory, arguing that while we talk about moral facts as if they're real, they actually aren't. Morality is more subjective than we often think. Now, even though these philosophers have their own takes on ethics and morality, they've got some common threads. They all dig deep into the nature of moral judgments, question whether morality is something objective or subjective, and explore what it means to live a good life. And of course, each of them contributed to building or challenging distinct philosophical systems, Kant's got his deontology, Hume's sentimentalism, Mill's utilitarianism, Nietzsche's radical critiques, More's ethical non-naturalism, Ayer's emotivism, or Mackey's moral relativism. Class is in session. I hope you guys are taking notes. Now that I've set the stage with some of history's most famous dudes, let's get ready to rumble and tumble in today's dog face debate. We've got guests with us who are ready to tackle the big question. Is morality subjective or objective? Gentlemen, introduce yourselves and state your position. Let's start with our guest, Will Keller.
Excellent. Thanks for having me on, gentlemen. It's a pleasure. First time on here. So my position is that morality is objective, meaning that there is a universal moral principles, a moral standard of right and wrong behavior. And we can know and discover these principles, and we can align our behavior to these principles. And in fact, to create freedom and to create change in the world, that is directly associated with if we align our behaviors with the objective moral principles. Want me to keep riffing?
No, I didn't know if you were or not. I was like, I'm not sure if this is his full speech or this.
I was like, should I do the whole 5 minutes or just stating the position?
No, I think we're just we're just introducing ourselves and tell everybody where they can find you too, brother.
Yeah, thanks, man. You can go to my website, willkeller.com. All my presentations and podcasts are on there. So that's it, willkeller.com.
Excellent. And I'm Benjamin Balderson. You can find me. We're on a hiatus currently on Weaving Spiders, but normally Weaving Spiders on Saturdays. And you can find interviews with me all over the interwebs. Just about everywhere. And obviously here on Deliberating Dogs with Dog Face Dudes with these fine gentlemen. There's another fine gentleman we're about to be meeting up with. Also, I've got Flattoberfest coming up in just a couple of weeks. We're about to be heading out, and I'll be grabbing Marcus and meeting Mr. Billingtano over here and heading down there. It's going to be most excellent. Marcus and I are going to be doing a live Spagyrix alchemy experiment, so that's going to be fantastic. A lot of people talk about a lot of things, but we're putting the we're going where the rubber and the road meet, and we're going to put it right there in front of everybody. So Flattoberfest, yeah. But absolutely look forward to this, and let's do this.
So Flattoberfest is coming up real quickly here. That'll be at flatearthfestivals.com. Benjamin Balderson, do you have a position tonight?
My position is going to be that reality or morality is subjective, that things that are objective meet certain qualifications. And while we can strongly feel subjective things generationally even, and eventually that becomes a societal thing, it is still a subjective thing. It's an objective to, it's a subjective to an objective.
So let's talk about the reality of morality. Is it objective or subjective? We'd like to start with Will Keller. And then there's this big question here. Is there such a thing as universally wrong action? Are there actions that are wrong no matter where or when or how they happen?
Great. Yeah, absolutely. So touching on reality, how I speak on it is that we each are having our subjective experience in an objective reality, meaning that we are sharing this reality together, and we each individually have our perception and our influence on our environment, but yet reality has principles or laws that are in place that are the governing dynamics of reality. I call them natural law, the laws of nature, and law, the etymology and definition, meaning a binding and unchanging condition. So these constant laws are there. They are the principles. And of course, we can interact with these laws. Everyone does. And when it comes to morality, we can look at it as cause and effect. So as we perform an action onto another human or sentient being, if it causes harm or initiates harm, that is an immoral action, right? And if it does not initiate harm, then it is a moral action. Now, are there universally immoral acts? My position is yes, there is, and we can sum them down to 7, right? Murder, assault, rape, theft, trespass, coercion, and deception, like willfully lying. I think all throughout the universe, these 7 transgressions are universally objective, right? They're immoral actions, and each one of these transgressions are a taking of something. So they're all theft in some form or fashion, right? Murder, the taking of life. Assault, the taking of bodily autonomy. Rape, the taking of sexual free will. So, and all the way down the list. So it's a taking of something, so it is theft. And there is, from that cause, that immoral action, there is an effect that happens. So individually, if human beings are acting immorally, then there will be an aggregated condition, the human condition, where I see us in now, one of, duress, coercion, and slavery. So absolutely universal actions. And I'll preface it with ethics. Ethics to me is the systematic study of moral principles. So it's almost studying the science of morality or the attributes of morality, of right or wrong action. And of course, there are virtues that I think are also universal as well. And I do take a stance that there is a gradient in ethics from objective to subjective, depending on the context, right? If you're talking about an organization, what's the organization's ethos or ethics? So they're internal qualities, but yet morality is that standard that no one should violate. So yeah, I'll end it on that.
Thank you. And Balderson, do you have your opening statement prepared and ready to go?
Today we debate whether morality is subjective or objective. To understand this, we need to understand the terms. Grammarly states, when comparing objective and subjective, objective means verifiable information based on facts and evidence. Subjective means information or perspectives based on feelings, opinions, or emotions. An easy example of a moral situation to be examined is murder. The objective part of this situation is a person has killed another person. There is something we can look at, measure, verify, something anyone can walk up and determine without having been informed of previously. How we feel about the objective fact that has happened is entirely subjective. Based on the objective fact, we can take a raw stand. Murder is bad or good. We can add situational factors, putting this into a more gray area rather than black and white. Was it self-defense? Was it in the heat of an emotionally charged moment, like finding a cheating spouse or someone hurting your child? Was it pre-planned? All of these being ways to determine your subjective position to the objective fact. In some debates I have seen broaching this subject, the person confuses a subjective with an objective fact. They say, I objectively felt this was wrong or evil, without understanding their feeling in relation to the event is the very thing that makes it subjective. I cannot in any way measure how you felt about this act. I cannot verify that what you state is how you felt. Nor can most psychologically verify what they think about a traumatic event. The second common argument I see for objective morality is religious in nature. And given the wide array of religions in the world, the only way that this could begin to be argued is if people followed the same religious structure. I personally am an Odinist, and our views on murder in many ways differ from Christianity, such as whether the victim was a friend or an enemy to begin with. The last argument I see used is the general societal reaction to the event. The example of murder, most of society deems bad. The people before us deemed it bad. Everyone feels this way. The simple argument to that is, obviously not everyone felt that way, or the moral infraction wouldn't even be a thing to discuss. We just wouldn't do it. The second part to my argument that I have never seen discussed is the epigenetic factor. When you look at studies on the generational effects of induced traumas in mice, we find some very surprising physical results. We also find that some of their behaviors logically do not track, but they are expressed anyway. We see this when things like a secondary stimuli are added. Many have at least heard of the study including electric shock and the scent of cherry blossoms on mice. When one generation was shocked and the scent of cherry blossoms was presented at the same time, the reasonable reaction became cherry blossoms are bad. Later in that generation and in successive generations, the scent of cherry blossom was bad, even though the electric shock stimuli was removed. The logic that shock and the scent were not necessarily tied together did not occur. Obviously, cherry blossoms are not immoral, but you cannot convince the mice in the experiment of that. If they were able to vocalize their morality, everyone would just know about cherry blossoms innately. The second generation, it would have been stories about the event, and by the third generation, only nerdy mice into obscure history would care, and the rest would call him a conspiracy theorist. The moral laws or natural laws we primarily agree on as a society follow the most traumatic and reoccurring experiences in society, which would carry epigenetically each time they reoccur, such as murder. I don't know which of these arguments or new arguments that Will is going to bring tonight, but I look forward to hearing them.
Thank you. Will, do you have any immediate thoughts about what you just heard?
Ben, you bring up some good points. I do want to say when I'm talking about objective morality, 9 out of 10 times, most people associate that with religion. And absolutely, religions have co-opted that category of morality, right? They want to be the arbiters of truth. They want to be the arbiters of right and wrong. So across the board, all cultural religions, really any type of religion, always wants to be that arbiter. So I do recognize that when discussing objective morality, it has a lot of cultural religious baggage, mainly Christianity and Catholicism. So, but when I'm talking about objective morality, it is separate from that. I'm talking about a science that through our human quality of logic and reason and our capacity to feel, we can discern and come to know and understand this science that is inherent in the fabric of reality and nature for us as human beings. The distinction from animals having morality versus humans, I do make that distinction because human beings are not animals. We are a separate species. We do have an animalistic biological components to us, but we are at a higher evolved species endowed with, that evolved neocortex, higher order, and logic and reason. So just by using logic and reason, and we can feel when we have created harm, and we can see when we have created harm, and we can see the effect that it has. It does not matter about the perception or the belief or the feeling of the justification, right? Murder is murder. Assault is assault. Rape is rape. Now, in a shared reality, we can talk about as if they're separate, right? We have natural law, cause and effect, but it's still up to human beings to discern and come to know and discover how reality operates, how objective morality operates, and we still have to convey that. For instance, talking about self-defense. If there's no witnesses, so jury of our peers, we still have to discuss that to see if it really was self-defense. But yet, the truth in reality, it could have been murder for sure. So I look at the objective principles of morality as the non-aggression principle and the self-defense principle. And I also incorporate self-ownership, because as individuals, we are responsible and accountable for the actions that we take. Epigenetics, great topic. I'm passionate about this topic because in the current human condition of slavery, where the control system has been going on for who knows how long, hundreds of thousands of years potentially, that absolutely there's been this conditioning, and religion, the cultural religions have a big part of it through the violation of rights and the conditioning and programming of human beings. That for sure, this is why the belief in government or the belief in human authority, that certain humans have authority over others, is so prominent. So a main thing to consider when we talk about morality and defining our terms, what is morality? Moralis from Latin means the difference between right and wrong behavior, stating that there is a difference, and there is. So this is based on right or wrong. So what is a right? How do we discern right behavior? Well, using the apathetic method, we can discover what not to do by looking at the negative. So by looking at the negative, we can discover the affirmative. And there's millions, an unlimited amount of rights someone can take, as long as it does not initiate harm or aggression on another sentient being, right? But when we look at the wrongdoings, this is where we get into murder, assault, rape, theft, trespass, coercion, and deception. So now we can have a more concise, logical perception. This is what our goal as human beings is to align our perception with the truth, with the laws of nature, the real facts in reality.
Balderson, your reply.
So, obviously, Will has taken the religious aspect off the table. I'm just fine with that. Again, that was one of three normal arguments. This one is going to fall more into the societal feeling argument. And there was numerous examples given, and I absolutely don't agree with those examples. Or, I mean, don't disagree with those examples, that many of the things that what we today would consider morals would be something you feel naturally. Now, once again, I do understand that humans are of a higher mind than mice. Now, with that said, most people aren't very much higher. They are still subject to their most base animalistic desires, their most base animalistic instincts, and they do nothing in any way, shape, or form to try to have an inner work or discover anything. And when something's a traumatic event, which funny enough, every moral listed, unlike most things, like you would go into a gym, you would expect to see the list of things as aspiring. These are things I should do. These are moral oughts. But that isn't where things ever go, because somebody has committed something enough to where an entire society has decided we don't like that. These people that were doing it, they apparently didn't feel the same way. So society then starts making laws and saying, we know you might want to do some murdering, but we're kind of against that as a whole. We don't really like that as a whole. And if you yourself are going to come bringing your murdering in here, then we're going to have to come up with some sort of punishment or correctional system in order to try and bring you into alignment with the not murdering, because we're just not about murdering. And so this is all, again, subjective. Even the term where he broke down, discover whether it's murder or not. Literally, what we're talking about is a human killing another human. The fact that we have numerous different words, numerous different stances, what was the situation? This all becomes very subjective. The one objective thing is that a human killed another human. All the rest of these things become, what is my juxtaposition from this one objective fact? And that can include many gray areas, or it can be extraordinarily black and white. Gray areas the black and white tends to be more masculine. This is why the law is considered masculine. Did this happen or didn't it? Did you kill another human? You did? Then you need to stand trial for murder. Then at the trial for murder, we can decide according to mitigating factors, such as, was this person intending me harm? Was this person taking from me? Again, was this a heat of the moment crime? I came home and found him, my wife, and I lost my mind. Are you a crazy person that doesn't understand moral? And that's what we start calling these people that live in a different moral system, is crazy. Are they a crazy person that does not live by the same morality as I do? So they're not even fit to stand trial, because to them, they did not break a moral code. So all of these things, again, are all sidebars to the actual fact of a human killed another human. Objectively, that happened. I can walk up, I can see that it happened. This human is dead. That's the end of the story. Now we can decide subjectively where we stand according to that, which I'm not even saying that this set of principles or laws is bad. I'm saying that they are subjective.
All right. And I agree with you on some of your points that you made. Human beings are the majority of the populace in the modern age is completely unconscious and rooted in that animalistic state of mind, which I think that's a big problem, right? That's a big problem. And kind of, the goal of my work is to inspire and influence individuals to look within themselves, to shatter their religious dogma and their false axioms, and to start to do that inner work of waking up or evolving and looking at reality and what is going on in the world and themselves, for sure, with a clearer lens and a wider aperture. So I totally agree with that. And this is how I equate the effect of the human condition, where governments are out of control, wars, the murder, the theft of the human condition, why humanity is enslaved. And that is due because human beings do not know what a right is. Truly, right? They think a right is something that government can pass in law, policy, and code, or it can be agreed upon. And if it can be agreed upon, well, then we're just going to go more and more into enslavement, because that's what that mindset, that out of control ego mindset, that's what it wants. It wants to play God. It wants to say what the law is. I see nature as the supreme authority. I take nature and creation or source, they're interchangeable for me. That's what I'm referring to. There's this higher creative intelligence, and we can come to know that on a personal level, meaning that we can come to know its laws. So the law of freedom states that as a society becomes moral, then that society will become more free. And if a society becomes immoral, then that society will become more enslaved, because the individuals that make up the aggregate or the collective, they themselves do not understand. They do not know the difference between right and wrong behavior. And due to that ignorance, then they're living in this relative state. Then absolutely corporations, feelings, wokeism, governments, they can justify, the etymology means to create a right, or I say what a right is. This is what that means, and that's exactly what they're doing. So sure, there can be some alignments like murder. Murder's, illegal in all states in America for sure. But of course, that's just that is obvious. That's logically sound with the natural world. But then you get into other things like taxation, property tax, license, and driver's license and license to work, et cetera, right? What is this really? This is a claim of ownership. And this is all due, and why do people go along with it? Because people do not understand the difference between right and wrong in truth, in that which is the realm of the real, in nature. And I think human beings can absolutely discern in reality what is real and what is fictitious, what is fake. And the social conditioning that has been propagated is very similar to how religions have propagated, or kingship or royalty, that this one person has the divine right to rule just because of their blood, right? That they're the arbiters of truth. They get to say what the right is, what right and wrong is. They get to make up the law. And of course, the aggregate of consciousness, human consciousness, started to pull away from that a little bit. So they had to make up some new form of control, which would, be democracy or modern forms of government. So it's all of this facade, this social engineering to keep human beings from not understanding the natural world and not understanding that there is an objective standard that we can know. And not only do we know it and we hold ourselves accountable to it, we hold everyone else accountable to it, including government, institutions, its henchmen, etc., etc. Because murder is always murder. And again, I agree with you, Ben, that just because someone died, again, we still have our perception. Was it self-defense? Who initiated it? That is important, because violence and force are separate things. Violence is the violation of another's rights, and force is energy expelled to defend yourself, right? It's like boxing. Boxing's not violent because it's consensual. It's forceful. So I make that delineation. But yet, there is no handbook like, the Bible or any of these holy books that say, got it, sorry, ranting. I was waiting to hear the beat, but
it got quiet for some reason.
Will, you put out a lot of really great stuff on the table here. Is there one specific argument that is in favor of your position being that morality is objective, what is your best argument in favor of reality for subjective or versus? I'm tripping over my words. This is a lot of big $5 words of vocabulary here. So your position is morality is objective. What is your biggest, toughest, baddest argument for Balderson to chew on?
Yeah, great question. I went on all types of different tangents. So yes, morality is objective, and it's not based on perception or feelings. It's not relative. So I'll pose this. If there is an island with 20 people, those 20 people, I'm saying that it is objective. If those people understand what rights are and they understand the 7 transgressions, they are going to be more harmonious. If each individual person has their own beliefs on it, for instance, well, I believe in raping women, right? That is obviously going to be out of harmony, and there's going to be opposition in that group. You can do 10 or 100 people, right? But this is an equation to society. It doesn't really matter the numbers. It's the state of mind and the action.
So with these 7 transgressions, could you remind us all, we're taking notes here, this will be on the quiz on Friday, what are the 7 transgressions?
Correct. It's murder, assault, rape, theft, trespass, coercion, and deception or willfully lying.
And these are objectively the reasons why morality is objective.
They're objectively knowable because we can observe their effects. We can do that through logic and reason. And it's also written on the human heart, right? We can feel, we have empathy. We can feel when we harmed someone. Now, whether or not that person is, a narcissist, a sociopath, a primary psychopath where they don't feel, it's a human quality that we can discern and feel.
Balderson, let's check in with you. Are you discerning this argument and are you ready to tear it apart?
I very much like Will's standards, and I like Will as a person. So the assertion that there is a presupposition to understandings of morality. Again, there was somebody that broke that in the first place. That person did not feel that. And that we had to list a list of what we would consider mental disorders, which is growing by the minute. There's probably 6 new ones while this debate happened. The number of mental disorders in order to box in people that don't agree with this societal presuppositions of morality. And I definitely agree with a lot of where he went with corporations and things like that, which is why we see things becoming what I also would consider not a good path. But again, I also understand that those corporations are doing that, so they would consider it a good path, that they find those things to be beneficial and good for them and the society that they want to achieve, which is, in my opinion, what good and bad is in the first place, that there is no good and there is actually no bad. These are very subjective things. We, again, just like morality, we step back, we look at the base action, and then we're deciding where we stand, hot or cold. Well, 87 degrees, I think that's hot. I think that's cold. Well, when you step back, there is a raw objective fact, 87 degrees. Nobody is going to argue about that. There's not going to be outliers that don't realize that it says 87 degrees. It's everywhere else from there that we start gaining perspective. I also, again, don't disagree that there's things that we naturally feel. But as in the rat experiment or the mouse experiment, and again, I am with Will on this, that there has been a whole lot of manipulation with this knowledge already in place. So there's feelings that people have about things that they should not have, that have been manipulated and put inside them. With that said, they will tell you 100% that what they feel is innate, what they feel is correct, what they feel is just right. And everybody knows it. This kind of thing can be pushed into any society, and all it takes is traumatic events and then a secondary input that's associated with the traumatic event. We've all experienced things like that. Like earlier today, my partner Brian, he goes, whenever I smell flowers, I think of death. Because the only time that he typically would smell flowers was in a funeral home, during a wake, things like that. So it had a negative connotation that a lot of people wouldn't necessarily experience from when they smelled flowers. These kind of secondary inputs, while a traumatic event go on, the strength of those, because that is very subconscious, is insane. And then when that's repeated over time, this just becomes something everybody knows, because this has been pre-programmed. But it's pre-programmed because it's able to do that because subjective is subject to change. Objective is not.
So you've heard Balderson's response to Will's argument. Will, do you have a rebuttal to that response?
Yeah, and I do agree on some points, but with the rebuttal, I think it's important to kind of to state that, you know, there's a difference between nature, reality, and an individual experience. So just because a bunch of people believe one thing, that doesn't necessarily make it right or true. For instance, a look at, you know, DVOC 19 and the needlecraft. A whole bunch of people thought this was a major issue. They believed it, so people needed to get the needlecraft, and that was the only thing that's going to save us, right? Now, what Ben explained with that tactic of that dialectic of instilling trauma and then the program right after it, that's absolutely one of their main tactics that they use, right? They traumatize people, creates a disassociation, and then they feed them the actual programmed information, which it's all perception management for behavior control. So we all, as human beings, we all act and behave by the information and the knowledge that we have through our subjective experience. And that's why it is our goal to educate ourselves philosophically, metaphysics, and morally, to have an accurate perception of truth. Truth is objective. It is that which has manifested and is manifesting. It's factual. So I can believe I'm a furry. That doesn't necessarily make it true, right? So, and we can observe that and see that. So I want to delineate that from like your buddy that smells flowers and thinks of death. He's associating that with his subjective personal opinion, but flowers are alive and they're a living thing, right? That's outside of his experience and his perception. Another example, just to kind of hit what truth is in reality, a quarter. You have heads and tails, right? So, but the truth is that it's a silver coin, and heads and tails are encompassed in that as well. But the silver coin is the objective truth. Rights can be known. Now, that doesn't mean human beings, just because you know them, they're going to act morally, right? We have to interact with reality. And this is why I stated the law of freedom. We can look at, Nazi Germany, or even today. If people understand that coercion is wrong, someone violating you is wrong, and that the only truthful, correct, moral stance is voluntary interaction, meaning I can't go to my neighbor's house and just kick in the door and just grab his dinner, right? That's a wrongdoing. I'm violating him. And this is what government does all the time. But if we understand that in our day-to-day interactions, it's mostly voluntary interaction, right? You're drive to the grocery store, someone there voluntarily bags your groceries, and you interact with the teller. So there is a standard, that moral standard of voluntary interaction. And as soon as you apply that transgression, that violation, it's an immoral action. Now, my point being is that we can have an effect. The human condition is slavery, and it will get worse through this false belief. People thinking reality and behavior works a certain way when it's a falsity. And that's done through, obviously, programming and conditioning and trauma.
Thank you for that rebuttal. Let's let that sink in. Balderson is preparing his best argument for presentation. Balderson, when you're ready, let's have it.
So each one of these things that you list, situationally, I can point out where they are just fine and everybody accepts them. Even something such as coercion. The typical feminine way of achieving things is through coercion. Men do things by force, women do things by coercion. That is just a basic feminine act. And through enticement, through creating a desire that you did not have. This is a standard operating procedure for a bunch of the world. And it's only in situations where we decide that this is a wrong thing. This is, again, where I talk about the gray area that Billingtano had asked about what a gray area is. And this is where we have decided something is right or wrong, but now there's also situations where sometimes it is right, sometimes it is wrong. Killing another human, where when Will mentions it, that the only time that killing another human could possibly be okay is when they are possibly trying to hurt you and in a self-defense situation. I can think of a lot of situations beyond that I would very much like to do so. And would. In my opinion, we're a very neutered society that actually has been taught that violence is such an abhorrent thing. And I believe that was programmed into us because there is things morally that have happened that I would commit great violence against if I had any kind of an army. Like, and I would put some heavy changes to some things. And this is all because I realize that this is all perspectives. When we call something good or bad, what it is something we like or don't like. What it is our subjective position to something that has occurred to us. And I am fine with a list of societal things that we have experienced enough time that we just don't want it to happen. Rape is a good example. There should be 0 times that there should be rape. If some people didn't disagree with that, we would never have rape. There wouldn't be a term for it. Nobody would even experience it. Unfortunately, it's something that is actually, there's an epidemic worldwide of rape. So those guys apparently didn't get the message, and girls at this point. Actually, there's a huge, Marcus over here has been building a dossier of older women in teacher positions taking advantage of young men, which definitely we would put in the coercion and using authority in order to gain position over somebody that doesn't have the experience or the understanding to even get into this realm with them. This kind of thing is just become rampant. So those people apparently don't agree. And while I will call them bad people because I'm with Will on almost all of his moral standings, I also realize that those are not the actual fact that a woman was violated is an objective thing. Where you stand on it is subjective. That guy that was doing it, he thought it was okay. Me kicking his head in until something goes squishy squish, I didn't. And then apparently we get into a whole nother objective subjective because I thought that murdering was pretty okay, but he probably didn't. So
Balderson's best argument presented there. I like to hear Will Keller's response.
I think we're probably about the back and forth section if you want to do like a close up of that, Marcus, and then we can do more of it instead of the extended periods where we can back and forth, and we can also delve into some other things where Will brought up a lot of points that were kind of outside of this that I would definitely dig into, and also, and I can see where they connect. I'm not saying they don't, such as right. And so there's some things we can do some back and forth, but yeah, let's go ahead and you go ahead and close up. It's by the time you're done closing up, we'll be at an hour. So
yep, will respond to Ben's strongest argument for morality being subjective, and then Balderson, you'll have your rebuttal to his response to you, and then we'll open the floor and gloves off. We'll go dirty, hit below the belt.
Awesome. Yeah, you bring up some good points, Ben, for sure. And I think it's important to know that, when I talk about objective morality and what we need to do to create change and create freedom, the word utopia means nowhere. It doesn't exist. This reality is almost like it's a spiritual schoolyard. We're here to grow and evolve in consciousness. So where we're at now, we're out of balance. We're in an imbalance to, violence, violations, and immorality. In homeostasis, in a balanced approach, you'd have the majority of people understand how to act correctly in the world, and absolutely the condition in society would be 100-fold better. But that doesn't negate that there's still going to be people that are going to, take incorrect behaviors, because this reality, it is objective that we are in it together, but we still have free will choice. So, I can know and teach murder, assault, rape, theft, trespass, coercion, and lying. Someone still has I have the choice, right? I can violate that. But what I'm proposing is that by violating one of those transgressions, it creates a negative effect. That a negative effect is harm. When we multiply that in society, it creates a condition, an imbalanced condition of slavery. So another thing, I do disagree on, men create force and women do coercion. I understand what you're saying, but I don't see that as coercion, because a man is still responsible and accountable for his own free will. So he's still making the choice, even though he's unconscious of it, right? A woman's innate abilities to persuade and use.
Lucky you're not Christian, or else Adam would be getting it right now.
use those innate characteristics and abilities, that has an influence. And that's what we're here to do as human beings. That's what we do naturally, right? We influence each other. As men have a certain type of influence on other people, and women, and vice versa. But I do not see it as actual coercion, which is the theft of another's free will, regardless of if they're conscious or unconscious of it. And my last point real quick is, let's see. So we can come to understand, for instance, the law of thermodynamics or the principles of aviation to fly a plane, let's say. But we still have to fly it ourselves. We still have to make that choice and perform the behavior. And understanding the objective standard, the foundation of interactions in reality, is what I'm calling objective morality. These principles, this is what we need to know, but we still have to align and act correctly. Now, I agree with you, Ben. If I saw a woman getting raped, I go and I beat that person to death. Now, I'm helping that woman out in her self-defense, right? Same with an elderly woman. This is kind of our goal to, in this shared co-creating reality, is we're going to have certain situations where people need help. And, there's no handbook to this. There's just these objective principles that I think that are observable, and then the effects are observable and calculated as well, for a certain outcome, to equate to a certain outcome.
Are those all your thoughts, Will?
Yeah, I'll leave it on there because I don't want to keep reiterating stuff that I've been saying already.
Balderson is going to respond to this and some points.
So when Will states, and I haven't quite gotten a grip on where he's landing on this, in order for when we get into the more back and forth portion. So I'm going to use my time to try and get more of a grip of this. When he states nature as a supreme authority, there's two schools of thought. Nature, as in nature, and I personally live in nature. And one of the things that I notice quickly is nature is very rapey, very murdery, very lots of theft. It's the way it happens. And so when I look at nature and I see that, then I understand that humans who have been imbued with the ability of higher thought, which is something that you can do above and beyond your natural, above nature, we're able to start coming up with ideals that are going to exemplify us as people. Once again, this is only after a separation from nature, which is horribly murdery and horribly rapey. Like, the cross species rape is amazing. Like, when you get out and rape in nature, the things that will try and hump on each other is shocking. But the other school of thought then is that it's what comes natural to human beings. And it somewhat seems more along the lines of where Will is going with this, which again then would bring me back to the epigenetic memory, where the reason that you feel like this is wrong is because a whole bunch of times in the past, people that you have known have been murdered. If you believe in reincarnation, you've been murdered most likely a bunch of times. You're like, that murdery thing's not that great. It's just not awesome. And nobody really likes it. Just a tiny few. We should not do it. We should make laws as a society against it. And we should just not allow people that do murdery things around. And I'm cool with that. But again, that all was just because of the human experience and then deciding we didn't like it so much. At one point in time, we can go back, there really wasn't that many laws about murder. Like, Well, were you two arguing? Yeah. Did he have a gun too? Cool. You shot the hell out of that dude. Yeah. He called you a scum sucker while you were playing cards. He had it coming. Like, so the things that we have decided that murdering is acceptable for, like for them, even under Will's no harm principle, he called me a scum sucker. I can't have people thinking I'm a scum sucker. Like, that's ruined my reputation. And you think I'm going to let somebody just do that right here in front of that guy? Is expressing true harm that he thinks he has subjectively, that have now apparently given him license to go ahead and shoot this other person, because these two have equaled in exchange. Not my system, but it was definitely a system that was heavily used in the Western world not very long ago. So the fact that these things are evolving says how very subjective they are. And again, not disagreeing necessarily with what Will's principles that he's laying out are.
Should I respond or okay, cool. Yeah. So I'd see when I say nature, I'm talking about the intelligent, creative, higher force, right? The all of everything, and of course, light and dark is going to be in there. There's going to be entropy and syntropy, evolution and involution. So both of those are going to be in there. And that's the the metaphysical and the physical, just as we have a metaphysical consciousness aspect to us and a physical, right? A physical vessel. So, but I do see a difference. I do not, when I say morality, I'm not talking about verbal or emotional harm. If that's a thing, right? Sure, someone can be cussing you out or gaslight you, right? But morality is behavior and action. So it's rooted in the physical, and it's with another person, right? So two or more beings. But in the ethical side, sure, the aspects, the internal characteristics, like don't be a dick all the time, right? Have integrity and honesty. These are virtues that lead to objective morality, that lead to being a moral, good, correct acting person. Again, you have free will choice for sure. And human nature, I see, bring it back to epigenetics, I see human nature as programmability, that humans are programmable. This is kind of our essence, that we can use the mind, which is prime, and then we can manifest and influence certain outcomes. So as information goes in, then the quality of interaction and behavior is proportional. So good information and knowledge on like how to act and morality, then most likely you're going to be a good person and you're going to act morally and correctly. And same thing with on the negative. Falsities, religious, which I see as holding one back, right? That's not in harmony with nature or truth. Programming and conditioning, absolutely, you're gonna be taking immoral, incorrect actions. So that's how I see human nature as programmable versus the religious position of, depending if you're a Gnostic, humans are bad, or you're a Christian, you need to be saved, etc., etc. Like that, there's those dialectics that are playing. We have the choice, and when we choose in this reality, there are consequences to our choices, and those laws can be known as well. So natural law, sure, that applies to the physical laws as well. Gravitation, thermodynamics, etc., electromagnetism. But there's also the moral aspect as well, and that is the effect of our behavioral choices. And yeah, that's
Go ahead and we're at the halfway. Go ahead and close up your thoughts there, Marcus, and we'll go into the direct confrontations.
Yeah, I've got some notes scribbled out here. We can talk about, libel laws and the subjective thin-skinned goat herders who don't like to be called dirty names and they want to fight it out. I want to get to this issue of how society is actually playing out these roles of morality with taboos, the pleasure principle, avoiding pain, seeking pleasure. So then the question becomes with this idea of the aggregate behavior of man, including man and woman. So everybody, and then corporations as humans themselves have a different set of behavior. A group of humans become a corporation, and a corporation is a person. So now a corporation is acting maybe in a subjective way, maybe in the best way for their stockholders. So there's a financial implication to morality. Greed is good, but are we saying greed because greed takes something away from someone else? Gordon Gekko in the movie Greed is good, and then we have the stocks in the 80s and the dot-com boom, and people are getting money, and how does money influence behavior? So with the way things have played out, 2020, that big event, we all remember what happened. There was a lot of discussion about morality involved with certain decisions and certain decisions that were forced upon the population. So the way all of this is playing out, we're immanentizing the eschaton, we're in the end of days, this is a zombie apocalypse. There's no reason for people to behave politely when there's so few resources and people need to get that last cheeseburger and the gloves are off and people aren't having babies, so the rape gangs are gonna keep the population alive and people are going back to these tribalistic ways. This experiment of America, this great big melting pot, bringing in different populations, different religions, different skin colors, different sexualities, different genders, different pronouns, all of these different people who are discovering their identity in an aggregate. Is this the best argument that proves that morality is subjective? Because the people themselves are playing out subjective beliefs and attitudes and opinions, and everyone in this current society is entitled to their own subjective opinion about what is morally right and what is morally wrong. Will, do you have a response to this? In reality, how things are actually playing out, not in our minds, not how we want things to play out, not saying, well, there's a 7 transgressions, that's taking property. It's always a theft of something. It's taking something that doesn't belong to you. And now the way that things have played out, especially the last 4 years, in reality, and people are documenting their lives digitally. They're committing crimes on Snapchat and boasting about it. All cops are the B word. They're burning down police stations. There's no law. There's no order. These rules and laws that are put in place by an enslaving government aren't being upheld in court. What is this leading towards? What is this proving to you?
Yeah, exactly. It's proving to me ignorance of morality and ignorance of the current situation. So I see the solution as education itself, because all change must stem from the mind. If you don't know it, and it doesn't come from that mentalism, then it's not going to change for longevity, right? So that's why we see so many people, reactive, emotionally reactive.
So would you not agree? We're in the back and forth portion. Yeah. Would you not agree that the controllers have studied the same occult?
Oh yeah.
And so would you not agree that they with that same knowledge have chosen what they just think is the best course, possibly even for humanity?
Yeah, good point. And not for what's best for humanity, for their own egoic self-interests, right? To play God. They themselves, the ones that the social engineers, it's dark sorcery, right? They're just propagating a certain type of information. But guess who's actually manifesting the behavior and doing the behavior? It's regular humans, like the police and military, or anyone in, even nurses and doctors and teachers, or just the average person that says, yes, we need more government. I'm voting for Orange Man, or I'm voting for Hooker Lady, whatever it may be, right? So that's how they kind of they mind control human beings, right? They're putting out. They control publishing companies, and religion's one of the biggest for sure, and still is.
So if you don't believe in a utopia, then you're axing out which civilizations, which are none of which, they all call them breakaway civilizations, or they just blooped out of existence, like Atlantis and Lemuria and such. Mm-hmm. Then you're more on the realist end of things, which I would also be. You understand that throughout history, there is always has been vast groups of people who have no interest in their own decision making. Yeah,
absolutely. They're unconscious, not evolved human beings. That my whole kind of point and position is, as humanity, if we want to evolve as a species, this foundational level of how to act in the world, which I think we're in a negative state. If you're looking at like the scale of just species on itself, we're in the negative state, right? So we're enslaved. We have this control system. So to get out of that, we need this basic fundamental knowledge, and we need to act on that. So, but for sure, there's going to be people. Look at the majority of people right now, right? They have no concern. They're in that fear state, and they just want safety and security, which safety and security doesn't exist.
So let's say hypothetically, and I'm not saying, again, this is debate, people, so I don't necessarily have to agree or disagree with anything I'm saying. Hypothetically, you're making a presupposition on the motives and the achievements of the controlling class. Hypothetically, they could see the situation much the same as you do, and possibly feel like this has been despite their best efforts to control. In that situation, in order for this growth that you want to happen, as an alchemist and as a basic person who watches nature, in order for something to make a transformation and a growth, the old thing must die. It must tear itself apart. It must completely rot and fall away. So, if what they are doing is achieving that result, could they not then say they are also attempting to bring about the enlightenment of man?
Yeah, but you can't really believe, right, that raping children and trafficking children is for anyone's best interest. Enslaving people, violating people is in the best interest of the species, right? That's like, if you have a garden, but you keep
later. If I have a short period where I let people, I do this to my children. Here, go do something. It hurts. It sucks, don't it? Now, next time, maybe you should listen to me. If this is over a societal course, they need to let this happen so the better man who will automatically make these choices starts emerging.
They don't have that right to play God. They don't have that right to say, okay, we're going to guide and dictate where humanity is going, right? All we have to do is observe the institutions, observe the education system, the health system. It's there for a reason and a purpose. The control system is working exactly how it's designed to. That's how, that's obvious. And that's just it's keeping people in a state of involution due to their own ignorance and own inaction.
There's a giant, though, presupposition that all mankind wants to take any kind of active part in becoming something better, taking an active part in doing internal work. When we can look around us, and I would say this is always applied historically, that 95% to 98% have no desire to do that, that they, without guidance, will automatically become more subject to their baser desires. I personally live in an area where it's pretty lawless. It's about as Wild West as it gets inside the continental United States. And I tell you what, the amount of thieving and other kind of nasty kind of activities that almost all the people around here partake in, you end up becoming the porcupine real quick. Like, I'm ready to commit some violence. Y'all come over here doing some things, some violence. Oh, you don't like violence? Stay over there. Cool. We're happy now because I don't even like you people. Like, this is as soon as you leave people to their own devices, this is what happens.
Do all those people in your community, or let's just say the question would come up, I mean, just look at the state of the world. How many people actually know what, like, the definition of what a right is? Or morality. But my point is that they don't have a right to be ignorant on how to act in reality.
What is a right, sir?
A right is any action or behavior that does not initiate harm to another sentient being. A right.
So the trannies that want to hang their balls in front of little kids and read books, that they have the right.
They have the free will choice, but that's an immoral, unethical thing to do, because you're talking about an innocent child.
They didn't harm him.
Yeah, but again, there is gray area.
He just read a nice story. Everybody likes a nice story.
Yeah, but does that person have the right to do that to a kid in their own house? Unfortunately, they do. Unfortunately, they do have that right. But that doesn't make it ethical or wise. Just like I have the right to harm myself. I have that right, but it's not ethical or wise. Now, other people in this shared reality, they don't have a right to be ignorant on how to act in reality. That's like, they don't have that right because it affects the whole system.
So what I would call a right is a privilege absent a duty. And so in my world, there really isn't any kind of a thing as a right, because I do very much live in nature, and in my world, and then when I look at the greater world, the only things that have ever been given are taken by force, and then the person who's willing to exert force says, these are the acceptable bounds in which I've created. So there is not truly any such thing as a right, because any of those things can at will be taken away from you. Whether just even the right to live. Tell that to the murderer. I have a right to live. Well, if a right was a concrete thing that was real, then he could not murder you. It would be like a video game. Like, dude, why are you sticking that knife? Dude, that knife is annoying. Why are you doing that? Because I have a right to live. God gave it to me. It can't be taken away. And I don't have to do anything in order to earn that.
Well, this is where accountability and responsibility is. I mean, you can know something, right? We can know what a right is, but still free will is activated. It is here. So I mean, I could say, oh yeah, I know objective morality, I know the rights, and someone can kick in my door and rob my house and shoot me in the head, right? So, or I could go get drunk and drive and hit someone, right? So we are we exist in this reality, which is like, it's the university. It's like a schoolyard. We're going to learn lessons, but we can still understand the foundational dynamics. Where humanity goes, I get a lot of people that ask me, certain situations or what would a free society look like? And this is a lot of shit that we're going to be figuring out, because we're still in negative knowledge. Like, the majority of people want a government and enslaved system. So, but we can inherently feel and use reason that stealing something, stealing life because I have the capability to do it, is wrong, is absolutely wrong. You can feel that. It's written on your heart. It's written on the mind as well, because it wasn't yours, right? So maybe it brings up the question, what is ownership?
Hey, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I think it's a pretty good question, and both of you can answer to it. Look at the Milgram experiment. How would you, looking at the Milgram experiment, argue that morality is objective, or that the Milgram experiment proves that morality is subjective? And that's the one where the doctor had.
I know the Milgram experiment. It's the one. It's the post World War II experiment where they tried to isolate out the rebel gene, and what they were calling the rebel gene was the gene where, despite what authority had told you, you had your own set of morality and chose to go against what they were telling, even though you were going to get penalized for it. And so obviously you're rebelling. And so they called this the rebel gene. And the disturbing part of the end analysis, the experiment, was that they believed that they could work that out of society. And more recently, they repeated that experiment somewhere in the 2010s, I think. And they weren't wrong. The rebel gene is the desire to go along has definitely increased. But I don't know if I would agree with that entire analysis, because in my opinion, the entire society's been feminized. And on the feminine side of things, you tend to want to fit in with the crowd. So you naturally would have had more of a move toward groupthink anyways. But obviously it's subjective, because most of them thought that they were doing good and right. And then a small percentage even decided, no, the right thing is not doing what I'm told. And I'm sure all of us here would agree with that, but we would be in the minority.
Balderson, could you repeat your definition of a right?
A right is a privilege absent a duty. Something that I have been given, God given, according to the way it's put, so then it's something that should be inviolate. And there is, in my experience, I've been beat up, I've been robbed, I've not been raped, but I've had most of the other bad things happen to me, and I didn't want any of them to happen to me. That not a one of them, God never came, no kind of God, none of them came down to help me out in the situation. They left it to the thing that nature always falls back on, which is doctrine of force.
Yeah, you brought up some good points, John, talking about the Milgram experience. I found that study extremely fascinating, because I do see a couple good points. One, you have the belief in human authority, with the actor pretending to be an authority figure and issuing a command, and then the participant accepting that, and they themselves pressing the button that's supposed to be the electric shock on the victim. And they would do that up to lethal frequencies, lethal doses of frequency. So there's an objective in that role playing, right? There's an objective immoral act, and that person is pressing a button and creating harm to another person, all the way up to death. Now, who has accountability for that? Is it the person that gave the orders, or is it the person that actually physically, in reality, created that violation? And for sure, it's the participant pushing the button. The authority, right? He's the dark wizard. He just mind controlled that person.
What about the coercion? Didn't he coerce?
Yeah, but no, because they could have stopped at any time.
But they didn't coerce and say that this is the right thing to do.
That was
when you're telling me that it was objectively wrong, that person was telling them that it was right. That's not coercion.
Well, they could have quit. They could have stopped and said no.
But they were coerced.
How are they coerced?
Because they were told that was the thing to do, that was the right thing to do.
Well,
if you what else is the definition of coercion?
No, but the study, they never said, if you don't do this, then this will happen to you. It just said, please just press the button. I'm giving a command. Please press the button.
The rules of the test were, if this person gets the question wrong, the rules are you give them a good old zapparoo. And then the more questions they get wrong, the more it gets cranked up. So this person, apparently, they need to answer these questions right, and you need to zap them and be the moderator of this. This is all well and good. That's what most people found. Most didn't feel this, what you're calling objective, because if it was objective 100%, all of them would have said, fuck off.
No, but see, that's the thing. Like you're a human being. We're each at our own different levels of awareness, right? So
objectively is a kill. If a human,
no, the objective happened with the victim.
Are they
the victim was
objectively
harmed?
dead? Are they objectively dead?
Yes.
Right.
Correct. Now, can
I give any caveats to that?
No, they're dead.
Yeah.
Correct.
Just objective,
now,
right?
In that experiment, was that person not getting shocked? I mean, it was role playing, but
objectively getting shocked, yes.
Correct. There it is. Harm. Bam. Immoral.
You were calling it morally wrong, which is
Correct.
Subjective. Those other majority of people who were involved in the experiment thought it was morally fine.
Yeah, but they can.
That makes it subjective. You can't argue the dead guy. The dead guy's just dead, no matter how you feel about it.
But this is a question. This is getting into the nature of reality. If you think something, that doesn't mean it's actually real in reality, or it manifests, or it has manifest. That does not make it true. It is a thought form, right? It's a thought form. I mean, this is what we see going on nowadays, right? People are believing in stuff.
Guy, he's definitely dead. Somebody killed him. He's dead right there. Boom, kick him.
Sure. I'm referring to the Milgram experience. It's objective, immoral act that the person is pushing the button and sending and is creating harm through electric current.
Most people don't agree with you.
Yeah, but they don't have to agree with it because
the objective thing is that a man answered a question wrong and another man pushed a button that gave him an electric shock, which it didn't actually shock him, people. The guy in the room was, I know you knew that. I was telling anybody in the audience that haven't read the experiment because I haven't ever explained that part. The guy in the room with the electrodes on him was an actor, and he was watching a light and acting like he was getting more and more violently shocked. So nobody was actually shocked in this psychological experiment. But those people all thought that they were doing the good and right thing. Every single one. This is how you know that this is subjective, that you can have different opinions on it. Nobody has a different opinion on whether the man was shocked. That we all agree on.
Yes, that is the violation. That's the violation. Morality counts for two or more people.
It's subjective with
What's
it.
What's
You're immediately jumping to subjective off of that.
How?
That we agree the man, because you're now making an opinion on the fact. The fact was he was shocked, and you're like, yeah, that's wrong. What was it? Something like 81% of the people said you're wrong. that
It
makes
doesn't
that
matter.
objective.
That's
Because
groupthink. It doesn't
nobody
matter
will
if the
ever
collective
prevent
agrees
people.
on something,
Stop.
right?
Well, we live in this democratic republic society
Yeah,
thing where we
democracy.
agree that
Mob rules.
casting ballots and having opinion polls, there's a lot of, I don't know how many opinion polls are to be trusted and are objectively verified and all the ballots are counted, but you go man on the street interviews and group think and peer pressure is going to determine what the answer is going to be out of politeness or just wanting to fit in, and this sort of constant need to conform to a consensus reality. We see that with Twitter becoming X, and now Brazil is saying no, our citizens cannot express their thoughts and opinions, and their peer pressure sort of deciding for our culture what taboos and mores and morals are going to be. That's an online thing, but that's coming from America, and America is trying to impose their values on our Brazilian elections, and there's election interference. So in actual functioning society, the way things are playing out, now X is banned in Brazil, and they're trying to separate from American Western values. Now, how is that playing out? Is that just a peer pressure thing? Is it a coercion technique? What is going on with Brazil and this banning of X, and how does that form a consensus reality bubble within Brazil that's going to be different from America? And does that then say that because America has different ideas, morals, laws, and things than Brazil, does that mean overall in our human experiment, this greater society of globalism, we've got two different countries with two different sort of laws and cultures and taboos and music? Is that subjectivity?
There is an aspect of subjectivity to it, but the violation and the wrongdoing is objective. You can't grant someone the right to violate someone. So that consensus ideology, it doesn't work, right? I can't get 10 of my friends to say, hey, let's go rob my neighbor because we got more people than you. That's not based in reality. That's not a right. Even though we could do it by force, yes, we could do it.
There are teenagers that
that
do
makes
that.
it absolutely. But
They
it
gather
still
up,
makes it a wrongdoing.
they choose a house to go into, and then they live stream themselves
I've seen it.
intruding on a house, and
That's
they're
right.
doing that, and they're getting away with it, and that's happening. So is that a subjective thing that's happening? This peer pressure, this group, this gang mentality, they're doing it. No one's prevented them, and now are there consequences on the other end? So how is this enforced?
Absolutely, there's going to be consequences, right? I mean,
from their father, from their mother, from their parents, from the government? Who enforces it?
It's wrong, but that doesn't mean someone's going to enforce it. So I'm talking about when looking at cause and effect, or like the law of attraction, it's just the energy and the influence is going to have an effect in the environment. So that doesn't necessarily say that there has to be someone policing this kind of stuff. You are the only person when it comes to safety and self-defense is yourself. That's it, right? So everyone has that responsibility to defend themselves. Now, looking at like America, like, do I have the right, if a police officer pulls me over and is trying to extort money from me, do I have the right to defend myself? Absolutely, I have that right, but that might not be wise because he's obviously, has a gun. Maybe I got mine, but
on force.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure they do.
Hard to fight with people that have the monopoly on force.
Yeah, exactly. And you
right
can see
or wrong, again, goes out the window. Morals out the window. He's got force. It don't matter.
Yes, I see what you're saying for sure. But even looking at other countries that have had their natural right of self-defense taken away, those are typically the more neutered societies.
Yeah.
So there's that responsibility, that self-ownership that is there, that we need to defend ourselves, because safety and security isn't a thing that can be granted to you by someone else.
I don't even disagree with your the entailment of the behaviors that we're seeing bring about the society that we're experiencing. I do not at all disagree. And I would say we align almost entirely on what type of society we would like to see. I would say that 90% of that you and I would see completely eye to eye. But once again, that's our opinion. There are definitely people that are very happy seeing this society. And in fact, the majority of society is happy to see itself this way. The famous Star Wars, when Queen Amidala is sitting there and he's like, so this is how it all ends, to thunderous applause. And like, fuck yeah, want the bugs. Like, want to own nothing, and they're going to cheer for it. And they are going to think it's good. And so are the people running. They're going to think it's moral. And you and I, we are going to be the outcasts that live in the inhuman lands that, yeah, baby, still have procreating viviparously. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to add in something real quick just on the Milgram experiment. You would have to be able to assess how the people felt about what they did. So I looked up just a quick search. It says participants in the Milgram experiment often reported feeling distressed, anxious, and conflicted about continuing to administer shocks. Even though they knew they were harming the learner because of the pressure from the authority figure, the experimenter, to obey, despite their own discomfort and moral reservations, many expressed relief after learning the experiment was a deception and the learner was unharmed. But some still felt disturbed by their actions. I've gone back and forth on this topic. I mean, it's been a real struggle for me. Will and I'd be like, where is objective morality? And, one light bulb moment I've had, which I haven't stuck on completely, was that it exists within us. We all have this process. It is discernment. And you look at, is that thing high or low? Is it to my left or my right? Is it black or white? Is it up or down? Like that's real. That's objective. And now again, if a guy's in a plane above me, then to him, my up is his down. To him, that's objectively true. To me, that's objectively false. I mean, I understand that it's down to him, but so it's interesting though, because then when you say that light bulb moment of like, no, it exists within all of us, then you go to the question, does it exist within all of us? And, not in our natural state, would that thing exist? And I watched Pinocchio about 10 times in a row with my son, and it does exist. It's a little cricket.
But that you're making a presupposition that everybody feels this way. And if that was the case, nobody would do those things. They wouldn't exist. They wouldn't be rampant. That's a fact.
Unless
I would say all those
control.
people wouldn't feel bad about what they did if there wasn't an objective morality. That would be my argument for the Milgram experiment proving objective morality.
I would say their morality doesn't match the experiment's morality. And it says, it did not say all. Do you notice that? It said many, not all.
I know. And that's what I'm saying. Like, does that exist within everybody? And if it doesn't, why doesn't it exist anymore? Has it been conditioned out of us? Or can you be born with a broken brain where you're just a psychotic? Or has that been a psyop to make us think that that's a reality? I
would make the case that naturally we're actually much more violent than what we've been led to believe, and that the curbing of the violence has actually hurt us quite a bit. So one of my bigger examples would be when you saw the stand against Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street, where all these dumbass kids sat on their hands and quietly waited for police to come by and just use up the entire back reserve of pepper spray right in their face. And they did nothing. It accomplishes absolutely zero. So it's very interesting to me that the controllers, who we all would agree control society, we also believe that violence is such a morally reprehensible thing. Well, that's funny to me that all of us think that, but they don't. They have no problem with killing off a bunch of us just to make a point. Just because they're irritated, just because they want to do an experiment. Well, wouldn't nature be, if something is harmful to you like that, to attack back? Would that not be the very nature of most things? And so to me, would it not be that we have been so heavily programmed against violence that they are able to do the most reprehensible things to us, and we don't stand up and act like any natural animal would?
I agree with that point. I would, instead of saying violence, I would say self-defense or a right, an objective right. And I agree with you. The populace of humanity is neutered. I mean, beyond imagine. And we absolutely, and this is why I take the task on trying to educate people, is it can and will are two separate things, right? But can we change the condition of humanity in a more natural progression through the mind, through learning, and like John has said, detachment activism? Yes, it's possible. Is it likely? Not right now, but it can happen. But will it? And will means personal responsibility from people. But do we have the right to stand up in large and use force to defend ourselves? Absolutely. And unfortunately, it would probably just be a few of us to do that. So, in this current time,
it only ever takes 3% to overthrow, and so that tells you that less than 3% are involved in the overseeing. If it only takes 3% to overthrow that. And so, and that's been every revolution historically. Tiny percent of the population, which is part of why, obviously not tonight, because I think you guys should go through and find some nice audience questions and have Will and I hit those. But in the future, I would like to debate government and things like that, which, because for myself, I'm an Odinist, and Heimdall separated man into the classes. I actually believe in the class system, and where you're calling things slaves, we call them thralls, and that doesn't mean that you get to abuse that person or that their well-being isn't something that they don't have an investment in. It means that, like at any basic job site, you have the guy who's in charge, you have some supervisors, those are Carls, and then you have the basic workers who don't really give a shit. They just want to shovel some whatever, throw down some bricks, eat some lunch, grab a few beers, get their pecker touched, and go to bed.
Is that consensual, though?
What's that?
Is it consensual?
Yeah, that is consensual. That's what they want.
That's a choice.
And that is what most of these people want, or else the controllers, again, who are at least 2% or less, would never be able to control. They want to be controlled because 95% of people don't think.
Yeah, I understand that point for sure. But when you have the majority of people that want slavery, right, that's violating the people that don't want slavery. And that is a big problem. Because we're not talking about preference or in a community where some people are just workers. You're talking about the continue evolving violation of other free will beings.
I also don't like this system.
Yeah.
It's whether it's objective or subjective that we disagree about. Go ahead. But go ahead with hit us with some audience questions.
Yeah, I'll throw one in real quickly. You guys talked a lot about violence. We want to talk a little bit more about sex and sexual immorality. I know you both have not included religion into this argument, but I want to say that in America, there's a certain part of the school day where we would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'd recognize the Bible, and then there'd be a time for prayer in schools, and that could be to any God that people believed in. So this element of moral education in the school systems and this quality of teaching children what rules are, what morality is, what taboos are, giving like Aesop's fables types of stories for moral education. that seems to have been removed. I had a 7th grade homeroom teacher, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and his personal faith was brought into the classroom, and he did his best to instruct us morally. The curriculum of the homeschool class was sort of a basic thing. Let's talk about these issues today. He would take it a step further and he would say, biblically, the Bible says this and this type of thing. In a public school, there's also private Christian schools. So this idea of moral education seems to me proving that morality is the nature and the nurture. It's taught, it's reinforced through examples, and the whole disciplinary system through the principal, through detentions, through hall pass monitors, all of this being trained into people. That might also include the idea of neutering the students so that they don't respond in violence. If that's the masculine impulse to get up, take your shirt off, and run around the classroom, and then the female impulse is to say no, we're going to drug you. So the use of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Let's have at it. Will, what's up with that?
Yeah, there's a reason why morality has been stripped out of schools, but morality for the longest point, without the religious context, is it almost, you're in the realm of occultism when you're looking at it as scientific and metaphysical and philosophical, right? But morality and ethics is a branch of philosophy. But when we look in public education, of course, it's always been in the guise of a religion, and that religion is also the arbiter of truth. So it's using a type of, mind control for sure. But aligning something, murder in government law, and then in reality, it's it's not contradictory. It goes together. It cancels each other out. Like, you don't need a government to say, oh, don't murder. You can discern this yourself in reality. So
if that was the case, then why do people still murder? And to more to the point, the government even says don't murder. The Bible says don't murder. All these things actually say don't murder, but people be murdering as hell.
Yeah,
lots of murdering.
Because they have free will choice, right? Why do people still make cat videos? It's like, that shit's so, mid 2010s.
Cats are fucking wonderful, Will.
I love cats. I just took a cat
Let's get into this, man.
So on Weaving Spiders, we did talk about how babies are made. We talked about penis, and we talked about vagina, and talked about sex education. We've been talking a lot about violence and taking of life. Is there a place for the government to give life, meaning forcing married couples to have children, or in some way incentivizing them to have children? And is there a role in subjective and objective morality in terms of, marrying and making babies and raising family and educating them?
Well, first of all, I'm an abolitionist, so I think external government needs to be completely decomposed and needs to be rid of as a belief system and a religion that it is, right? Because it does not align with reality, right? It is mind control, it is coercion, it is violence, etc. That does not mean that there's a structure that aligns with moral principles and ethical principles. For sure, there can definitely be cooperation in a voluntary society where there's voluntary interaction, and objective and subjective with having babies and marriage. Was that a part of the question?
Yeah, we talked to a guy who was in kind of the red pill community in the terms of pickup artists leading to sexual encounters, pleasure principle, orgasm, that sort of thing. So hypothetically, if I coerce a woman to, in the missionary position on a Saturday night, Sunday morning, she's pregnant, 9 months later, we're having a baby together, and then marriage is a choice along the way, shotgun wedding or whatever. If I've coerced her to have my child and she didn't want to have children, but then she discovered that she likes to have children because she's a mother now, and I gave that to her, but before then she was didn't want to have any children, and now she's had children. This is a hypothetical situation,
Sure.
Where maybe she had an idea about wanting to not be a mother, but then she was forcefully impregnated. didn't like it, didn't file a rape kit situation, didn't cancel me or anything, but raised a child, didn't abort it. It's a separate issue. But then discovered later
What's his
that, hey,
name, Marcus?
I want to be a mother. Was that a subjective morality choice in this hypothetical situation?
I would say she has transmuted that experience that actually happened in reality, from a different subjective perception. But as long as the initial act was consensual, right? Maybe she didn't want kids, but there was no protection used. The male, the female, they both have a responsibility in that aspect. And
50 Shades of Grey and all of this smut literature proves that it seems to sell. It seems to sell well, and women are going to the theater to see domination and submission and men forcing themselves on women, and this is what's exciting them, and they're buying movie tickets to see this stuff. There's no consent involved, and that's exciting. And then maybe babies are made, and maybe that's how the species is procreated. There's such a concern now in Japan and other further industrialized civilizations. Now this is the fourth industrial revolution, and we're getting into love dolls and AI and VR work experience. So in this now future cyberpunk world that we're living in, with the laws that have been in place and the laws that are going to dictate future decisions, what is the argument for morality being objective or subjective based off of our current future? We're living in the future. We don't have flying cars yet, but this is not the past. This is not the 1990s. We have the internet. We have X, Twitter banned in Brazil. We have this new thought war happening. The world that we're living in today, is this proof that morality is objective or subjective?
Oh, I think it's proof that it is. It's proof that it is objective, because you're always going to get a condition of chaos, always, and disorder with immoral actions. What you were describing earlier is epidys-eugenics, right? Through mind control, through social engineering, you are influencing people from a distance, influencing them with information to act a certain way, and that is for downbreeding. Eugenics, dis-eugenics. So, the Margaret Sanger Society, Planned Parenthood, all this type of propaganda has done this, movies in Hollywood, etc.
So, for myself, it wasn't a singular moment. But honestly, a lot of things, when I started setting up my own intentional community, is where I started having a lot of realizations about objective and subjective. Because there's nothing like being a leader of a community and having to navigate through personal issues. And you can only do that so much without understanding that on the face of things, you're a hypocrite. And it's only through the situational variables that you come to understand that certain things in certain situations are acceptable and in certain situations they're not. And that's a very personal decision on where that stands. And that may or may not align with the society around you, but it's the actual act in and of itself is the only objective thing that you come to understand. And then you have to, as a person, own your position according to that act, and then understand that that is your choice, your morals that you chose to follow. That I choose not to murder people. I choose not to rape people. I choose those things. I don't need a God. I don't need internal monologue, any of those things. I myself, as a person, have made those choices that those are things that I think are good. And I own that entirely.
Yeah, so having the subjective experience in an objective reality, absolutely, you are responsible for your choices. But going
I was
up to
responding what's on the screen, Will.
oh, gotcha.
I was responding to the questions.
Got it.
For our
Gotcha.
listeners, the question on screen in Ginger's Everyday Book Love Day asks, curious about real life moments y'all as individuals have experienced an objective encounter that made you question your prior subjective held beliefs about objective subjective morality. So real world examples of this.
For me, putting my dog down is a real world thing, right? I mean, my dog's had hip dysplasia so bad he couldn't stand up, and he's going to the bathroom everywhere. He's looking me in the eyes, and I can see and feel his pain, and he's looking to me as like a steward or a companion, help me. And I made the choice to have him put down. Now, is that my right to take his life? It's not my right, but it is a choice that I took, and I lived with the consequences. Absolutely. I mean, looking at everything as kind of energy, and is murder, is that worse than coercion or stealing someone's bike? Absolutely it is. It has more energy, negative energy attached to it. So here's another touchy subject: abortion. Abortion, you don't have the right to take another's life, but you do have the choice, and you might be in a bad situation where you're going to make that choice and have to live with the consequences. I myself was in that situation. We made that choice. It's something my partner at the time and I regret to this day. So
I'm down with the public duels for public officials, Slick. I did see that question.
Question being public duels to defund and redefine the sports industrial complex. I guess put it in like a Mad Max Thunderdome. Let people fight it out. Gentlemen duels or fisticuffs.
They teased us with it. They're like, Zuckerberg and whatever Elon Musk are gonna MMA it up. They teased us with it. All we needed was Zuckerberg to get a little midget to sit on top of him, and them to put a dome on top of it. Gold.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Question.
Even like the UK. What's going on in the UK right now?
Demon parasites, angels, demons, spiritual dimensions. There hasn't been a lot of talk of capital R religion. We did an episode where we talked about religionism. The audience wants to know specifically about a spiritual dimension to consciousness levels and what's at play there.
I like that. I do believe I wouldn't call them as much parasites as energetic things. I think there's energetic forces, and we're in I've seen this mentioned in the chat, the season a number of times, and I think we're in a specific season, but I think it's a cyclical thing where, just like my garden, at the end of the year I have to destroy everything out in the garden so that way there's room for those next year's things to come up. So I definitely think that's, I mean, I'm not into the whole Abrahamic angels and demons, but I think there's forces that are very destructive at play right now going on. And religiously, it gets funny. Again, I'm a heathen. So was the guy my enemy or not that it got killed? If he was my enemy, so he would have tried to kill me. What difference does this make? Like, this guy probably would have killed me. Like, and these people that are going around thieving and doing things like that and causing harm on our properties and things, well, did they need a murdering? Like, they're much more ambiguous. If you ever read the Greenland saga, while societally you didn't just go murdering people, they were much more ambiguous about it. Like, the start of the Vinland saga is where Leif Erikson, it's like he gets kicked out of a village, like, and it just says there was some killings, and so he moved to a different village, and then there was some killings in that village too, so he moved over into this area in Greenland. Like, they're not even
about borders.
Good old Germans. They're like, there's zero emotion attached to it. Like, yeah, there was some killings.
So we put up fences, we put up walls, we separate each other. You know, some animals don't get along. If it's a human zoo, we got to keep different animals in their separate cages. This sort of self-imprisonment or the self-imposed quarantine over the last 4 years seemed to work really well. We had carbon emissions down. The skies were blue and green. I didn't see any chemtrails or contrails or anything in the sky. Maybe some UFOs or flying saucers or Project Bluebeam or programming for that. But you know what? Last 4 years, when the roads were clear and people were staying home, that was pretty good. People weren't getting in fights. So maybe we should all just ground ourselves and live in our backyards and not explore anywhere, and stay in our little cubicles and not look at our neighbor with lust in our hearts or eyes. And if we don't interact, then how are we going to procreate and continue the species? That's that epigenetic, eugenic sort of birth control argument that probably comes into morality being objective, subjective. We're not specifically talking about the rights of abortion, but that is always a topic in rural areas. You have cities, and then you drive out of the city and you drive through pastures and farms and cornfields, and then you see people voluntarily put up signs talking about rights to life and abortion is murder, and the heartbeat starts at how many weeks and all this thing. And then the cities, in the cities, they're all marching around the courthouse with pussy hats on, saying it's a woman's right to choose, and the man saying, well, I want to choose for us as a family. We're talking about creating families and the best way to live. And regardless of whether morality is objective or subjective, there is a need for companionship and friendship. We've talked a lot about violence and fighting and breaking rules. What are the spiritual rewards for living a good life? And is that coming from government, from your neighbor, from your wife, from your girlfriend, from your thrall, your crush, the person you submit to, a S&M relationship, your sugar daddy, your mama? I mean, what is driving human behavior in this world? Subjectively, objectively, morality, amoral behavior, greed is good. Is it really profit margin? Is it the economy, stupid? Is it the economy? Is it Bidenomics? How does this play out in the US of A in 2024?
Yeah, I think it comes down to what do humans value? And
donuts. They got needle craft because they were given cheeseburgers and donuts.
Yep, exactly. And you could see what people value, and it's unfortunate. And sure, I'm not talking about certain preference, how you like your ice cream or something like that. Big things like the lack of meaning and purpose, the lack of value of truth, and then of course morality, and just nature and the human connection, the interconnection that we have, right? These things aren't prevalent in Normieville in the society. So I mean, I'm very much I'm a pagan animist. I think that cities are the third world. I think somewhere like where Ben's living, nature's the first world.
Unnaturally creates a Universe 25 situation.
Yeah.
Is what I think happens, because obviously I think you agree that we're not as a plane or as a world, the whichever you want to call it, the space has not been taken up. But what's happened is because all these people have moved out of the country and have conglomerated into the city, where before, like in the United States, small town America is fucking dead. It's dead. Like there is a million little tiny towns that are used to be thriving, and they're now dead because everybody moved to the city. So do you think that more of this is this societal degradation might be the Universe 25 effect due to them all pulling into these isolated spots?
What is the Universe 25 situation?
Well, they did. It's called 25 because they repeated this experiment 25 times. And so they took these rats and they gave them a utopia. So then...
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah, the rat utopia experiment. And so eventually each time, before they ever reached, that was the interesting part, before they reached capacity, they would have this societal breakdown that we can match very similar to what we see happening. And I would state that happening primarily in cities, because you go out to small town America, you still see what you would have expected out of like the 1950s. And you go to the cities, this is where you see all the extraordinarily wild things.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that comes down to perception, thinking that this is the way that we need to live. And this is that lack of connection of the natural world. And yes, the natural world has entropy and syntropy for sure. There's going to be both. There's death and life in balance. But to think that we all can live packed in a city and that's not natural. It's bound to break down for sure. Compacted in a city for sure.
I keep hearing the word centipede. Centipede, is that a Pokemon? Is that a Pokemon Go thing where we entice people to play a video game and we give them XP and experience points and gym badges? What is centipede and what does it have to do with
syntropy?
Morality? Oh, centipede.
The syntropic force. So you have entropy, which is the breaking down and the condensing. You could look at it as death.
I'm still hearing evolution like in Pokemon.
Yeah, evolution or involution. They're two forces of nature, macro forces that interact and do this dance.
Right.
Yeah.
We're talking about a civilization, a society in America where Pokemon's the biggest thing. It's out of Japan, and everyone loves Pokemon Go, and they love the incentive to have a smartphone with GPS, and that's what got them out of their houses to go on hikes, the sort of virtual thing, which is leading to this question of social credit score and good guy points and good boy points, and you get your chicken nuggets and you get your coupons and you can spend your money, your EBT on your universal basic income. And these are ideas that are coded and ready to go. They're ready to press the button, flip the switch, and say civilization now has a universal basic income. You have your good boy points, so your car can allow you to travel 25 miles today or 30 miles today. What happens if society doesn't raise its consciousness? Irregardless, morality, subjective, objective, what's actually playing out in the near future? This doomsday scenario, 15-minute cities, you'll own nothing and be happy. World Economic Forum, we had Agenda 2020, now it's Agenda 2030, and the climate change is happening, and Greta Thunberg is getting cuter and cuter by the minute.
It's the elimination of free will. It's ultimate control. The technocratic control system, where material technology is increasing, but spiritual maturity is decreasing to the point where people don't even think they have free will. Because that's the thing. Free will, sure, it's a gift, but it has to be activated. You have to act on it. You have to make the choice. So everyone right now, in the majority, spiritual infants. I do think that there is a depopulation agenda that's going on. They wouldn't mind having a few less slaves on the plantation so they can condense them all into those 15-minute cities. But they ultimately they want that control system. I believe that nature answers to the energy that we put out as well. Being in, the web of weird, being connected with everything. And I could see something as immorality and that energy gets such in an imbalance. We're going in opposition to nature and the flow, the rhythm of life. I think nature actually has like an immune response. I mean, I'm talking about the planet has an immune response, and there's some type of cataclysm or something like that. And another thing to consider, the social engineers might stage that. Because why not? You create trauma, you knock people back in their public technology, and you create that trauma, yet the social engineers will be totally fine in their bunkers and have their technology, and they can reset the control system and tighten it up even more. Those are potentialities.
I want to make one last. Oh, go ahead.
I knew that the ladies have been waiting to see my old ass flex. I knew that. That's we've been saving that. We didn't want to get flooding the show at first, but old men flex That's what that was what we were gonna name the show.
I want to just say, and then this will probably be my last comment, and then I'll let Marcus take us out tonight. But that, in arguing objective morality for a long time, one thing that I got stuck on was like with the law of freedom that Will was talking about, that if a society is moral, it'll be more free. If a society is immoral, it'll be less free. And I was just like, I thought about that, like, well, you would have to then show me the moral society. But you could argue that that doesn't really exist. Like, all societies have fallen. So were we all immoral? And it brings me to this quote, which Martin Luther King said it, but I think he took it from somebody else. But it's, the arc of history is long and it bends towards justice. So I would present it from the position of, over the long haul, we are working this out. We are sort of discerning morality. We're figuring out what it is over time. However, to take that position, you would then have to say that there was a reason why we had to go through all this, what seems so terrible and end of the world and all of that we had to go through that to then intellectualize this. And I would point to a document like the Declaration of Independence, where, obviously those ideas have been expressed before, but these men who were, expressing an idea to inspire people to have, it was based on this idea that there is this objective thing that we all have within us. So I think you have to sort of accept the violations that have happened as learning opportunities for us to evolve. So anyway, that's my last comment for the night.
Great point.
Good stuff.
Great.
So we're getting close to about 2 hours, 12 minutes, and you guys have been very respectful of each other's time limits. We'll stretch it out just a little bit further to see if there's any comments in chat, and then we'll kind of close it up with this argument.
Good, because anything else is going to require much longer to get into, because it's like there's a bunch of pieces to that, again, entire debates on their own.
And we're trying,
We'll do it again.
We're trying very diligently and very purposefully to really focus on specific arguments, going deep on very specific, at times contrived arguments. So the final question for you both, you've been master debaters tonight, Will Keller and Benjamin Balderson, is the statement, is morality objective or subjective? Is that a contrived question? Is it a contrived argument for the sake of debate?
Sounds contrived.
Has it been made legitimate tonight?
Go ahead, Will. You're the guest, sir.
Closing statement.
Yes. Is the argument tonight, the debate we had tonight, based off of a contrived premise? Is it just clickbait?
No, I think it's not just clickbait. I think we both made some good points and hopefully planted some good seeds for people. And I would just end on my biggest argument for moral relativism. When you have a society that enshrines moral relativism, you can justify anything, even truth, right and wrong, any type of action, what's going on in the world. You can justify it. And that's exactly what the control system does. And I do like what John said. It's just like an addict, right? You don't know. You're not like, oh, well, we're at rock bottom here. This is my rock bottom. I better start, improving and working my way up. You always look back on it, like after you got over the hill. And I do see the cyclical nature in humanity's evolution. And it's like a wave function with the trough and the arc. The question is, how long and deep is the trough going to go before we start to turn back upwards and make that climb to the arc and look back and say, fuck, that was brutal. We learned a great lesson. And I think that understanding the fundamental and foundational principles, the standards on interactions with each other, that it is objective. Understanding that is at the core of evolving and turning the tide from the condition of slavery towards freedom and higher awareness and consciousness.
Balderson, your final thoughts.
Tonight's show is brought to you by Seeds. Grow your own fucking food.
True that. Absolutely.
So
It's good food for thought.
while I agree with Will on most of his what I would call morality, again, I don't see where this is at all objective. In my opinion, all morality is all morality is relative. They whether you've picked a religious system because you think that it aligns morally, or you've decided to go left-hand path and just pick your own set of morals. Moral relativity applies to all of us. Is straight out. Some of us want to own it, some of us don't. But we all end up choosing, as Will has pointed out numerous times, we all have that free will to act in the way that we deem best. And we all do. I don't in any way believe that there's any Dr. Evils, that anybody sits in a mirror and goes, I'm evil. I believe that everybody, even the ones that we would consider evil, are acting in what they would consider their own good, possibly in the good of society. And so with that, what I believe is the opposite of what Will does, where when people start believing things are objectively true and not owning it as a choice, that's where religious zealotry derives from, where this is the absolute truth. Anybody that believes this is wrong and they are abhorrent. And this is where the true root of abusing other people comes from. When you start believing they are lesser than you, that's when you start gaining license to do things that most of us would consider immoral. In the control system that we have now, we all realize that they think of us as sheep, that we are not equal to them. And that way they feel like they can do the things that to us that we are doing. You see this in certain religions that have smaller hats that they wear up here and things like that, where certain classes of people are cattle and can be harmed, can be eaten, can be done anything you want done to them because they're a lesser being than you. And so anytime you can put such an absolutist spin on your morality, then anybody that does not fit into that, it becomes, by the very nature of it, evil and something that should not be. Where when you start owning your morality and saying, this is my choice that I think is better, and possibly a choice that a larger society should also experience, such as, I don't think you should be murdering, maybe the whole society should do that. But again, that's not because I'm somehow God-given or some giant superior being that's out of desire to see the embetterment of all.
Now I'm scrambling to look up some cliff notes for that Nietzsche book, Beyond Good and Evil. If evil and good and evil are in the eye of the beholder, maybe that's the position some people take. It's sort of this point of view, reality tunnels with our social media, X, Twitter, Snapchat, this idea that everyone has a phone and they can record their lives and they should vlog it and live stream it. And people are putting on this sort of character, and whether or not they see themselves as good or evil. I mean, we didn't even mention de facto Satanism and people who practice certain occult magic systems, and they do portray themselves as being evil and very self-serving. Maybe one of those individuals is hearing this and wants to enter the debate. Maybe there's a more religious figure. Maybe there's an Orthodox. You know, we want to encourage debate. Now we're looking at forward thinking for new topics every Tuesday night. We got a lot of Tuesday nights in the calendar year, and we're, what is this, 8 episodes in, John? We're going to keep doing this. There's an infinite amount of topics, and then we'll circle back to topics we've explored. Is there a way that people can contact us with hookups for people who want to show up on camera and voice chat with us in this little StreamYard and debate? Is there a way to contact and suggest topics for debate? How would our audience go ahead and participate with us?
I believe it is 3ddebates@gmail.com for now. So
okay, we'll have to put that in our show notes. Otherwise,
Thank you very much, Will. That was an
YouTube.
excellent debate, brother.
Thanks, man. I don't do many debates. This was fun. You guys are all respectful. And, you know, this kind of stuff needs to be done more. So thanks for having me on.
What could we find at willkeller.com, and what should we look for at willkeller.com?
Yeah, I think my presentations are my strong suit. I do a logical progression in each of those presentations. So the freedom presentation, the spirituality presentation is good. Also the rites of passage. And I have one of my main topics that I focus on is conscious parenting, and kind of helping parents kind of evolve their outlook on what stewardship or parenting is.
Now, see, if I would have been in Marcus's position when I was introducing you, I would have said, "Will, not so chill, Keller."
Well, this is our live recording.
Initiation one, and you said, "I'm not Will Chill Keller anymore. I've progressed." So, Will, not chill,
Keller. Your real name.
He comes out every once in a while. John knows.
It's been a lot of fun. John's in control of pressing the button and playing the music.
All right, you guys. Good job. That was a great discussion. I really enjoyed listening to you guys. You guys both influenced me on both ends, so it was good to hear you guys hash it out. You guys have a good night. Thanks, everybody, for commenting and joining us.
You win.
Deliberating. Deliberating. Dogfish. Deliberating. Dogfish. I'm the dude.
One minute, dude. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fight!